the Republican Party, when I became a Republican in college, you had to really be convinced that it was the right move because all the political wisdom and all the popularity was against being a Republican. The Republican Party was so small that you knew really everybody who was in there, and there were very few, if any, elected officers who were Republicans, and we just struggled and struggled. But the Democrat Party, particularly in those days, was far more moderate and in many cases very conservative. So anyway, when I ran for state legislature in 1984, everyone told me you can't win as a Republican. Go ahead and keep your same philosophy, but run as a Democrat. People understand that because that's what people had been doing for many, many decades. Well, hard-headed, ran as a Republican. Eric Johnson, who went on to be a state senator and had a big impact on the growth of the Republican Party, he was my campaign manager. My wife, Libby, was, I'd say Eric was maybe more the advisor consultant and Libby was more the manager, my wife. And, we just started out with a small cadre of friends and started knocking on doors, but a guy named Nelson Sevier had run against the incumbent Democrat in 1982, and he only won 1 out of 12 precincts. But he got 41% of the vote. And we figured, well, if we could win a few more precincts, we could get 51% of the vote. And the key to it would be hard work and going door to door. And so that's what we did, and the charge against us was, well, you can't get anything done as Republican. Chatham County is going to waste their vote. And so, we still went after it. We went after it hard, and I was able to win, and we did well. We got 58%. But the General Assembly back then, out of 180 members, we went from 23 to 26 Republican. I had 2 other guys in my freshman pledge class, if you will, Dick Ransom from Augusta and Charles Bannister from Gwinnett County, and that was those were the 3 new Republicans that year. So we increased our majority from 23 to 26 out of 180. Think over in the Senate, and by the way, Johnny Isaacson was the leader. Herb Jones from Chatham County, but from a different area, he had been the Republican leader. Johnny, he had run for Congress unsuccessfully, and so Johnny took over. In the Senate, you had Paul Coverdale. I think he had maybe 6, perhaps 9 Republican senators. You learned to survive on ideas and on personality because it was very difficult to get good committee assignments or good assignments in general to co-sponsor bills or carry pieces of legislation. But we worked very hard, and I learned from that. Being in the minority, you had to have maybe a little bit of sharper wit. You really needed to know the legislation. You had to read the bills. If somebody asked you a question, it was a golden opportunity if you knew the answer. And particularly if they'd already asked 3 or 4 Democrats and they did not know the answer, and you start looking brilliant. But I guess what was important to me and what was formative is you could get things done in the minority, even in the extreme minority, if you worked hard and had good ideas and learned how to get along with people. That's what we did. And one of the big issues, and an issue that helped me get elected, was the incorporation of Wilmington Island. And since that time in Georgia, we've had a lot of incorporated cities. Sandy Springs was one, and there was a state representative named Dorothy Felton who worked very, very hard on incorporating, and she and I kind of worked together. Johnny Isaacson had told me to get on the State Planning and Community Affairs Committee, which I did, and so we tried to find out if we could get a referendum passed for Wilmington Island to vote and to see if they wanted to become their own city, and the city of Savannah opposed. It was a very difficult issue, but we got a referendum approved. It was voted on. The people turned it down, but I'd say that was maybe my biggest legislative accomplishment, was getting Wilmington Island the right to decide if they wanted to incorporate or not. Couple of other things. Back then, C&I dogs were allowed into public businesses, but not service dogs. So if you had muscular sclerosis or some other handicap, you couldn't, and you had a service dog, you couldn't go into a restaurant. Well, I passed legislation to allow that to happen. Another thing was hospice. Hospice was just coming on. And if somebody was terminally ill and death was going to happen any day or any hour, the family still had to call the doctor in to pronounce the person dead, and so the funeral home could not pick up the body, and kind of gruesome that, okay, Dad's dead in the back room, he's been dead for 4 or 5 hours, but the doctor hasn't been able to get by. Well, we changed the law that I sponsored that allowed the nurse in those type circumstances to declare the body dead, and very, very important for people in those kind of circumstances. Another bill that I got done had to do with the intangible tax. Back then, you paid a tax on stock that you owned called the intangible tax, and often that tax was like $10. Well, there's no way the state was going to process that and make any money on it, and lose money, in fact. And so we said that if your intangible tax was under a certain threshold, that you would only have to file every 3 years. Doesn't sound like much, but getting stuff like this through a Democrat House was a big deal. And so, I learned to get some things done in a minority position, and that played huge benefits for me when I got into Congress, because I've served twice in the minority in the U.S. House, twice in the majority. But I learned that you get along with people, work hard, you can get something done regardless of the status of your party, because you as a person become more important than your party label.